Excellency, kindly say after me. This is the oath of allegiance. I, your name,
John Dramani Mahama,
do in the name of the Almighty God swear
do in the name of the Almighty God swear
that I will bear true faith
that I will bear true faith
and allegiance
to
the Republic of Ghana
the Republic of Ghana
as by law established, that I will uphold
and that I will uphold
the sovereignty
and
integrity of Ghana, and that I will preserve, protect and defend the Constitution of the Republic of Ghana. So help me God.
So help me God.
Well, what a day it has been. It is now official. John Dramani Mahama has taken that oath of allegiance and also the oath of presidency, officially paving way for him to take the reins of government now as the 6th president of the 4th Republic. And as we know, the head of state is today assuming office on January 7, which is a day recognized by law as the Constitution Day, a day dedicated to reflecting on over 3 decades of the country's constitutional democratic order. Well, in his inaugural address today, John Mahama has been setting the ball rolling about what needs to happen to the 1992 Constitution. So if you're joining us tonight on PM Express, you're welcome to the show. My name is Blessed Sugan. Of course, this is the man of the moment, John Dramani Mahama, who we are, of course, celebrating and congratulating for becoming the 6th president of the 4th Republic. While he has a long history, you know about it, he served as the 4th president of the 4th Republic before, but he's been successful at it. Let's give you a sense of what's been happening to this gentleman who's, of course, made his pronouncement as to where the nation needs to go and what needs to happen specifically with regards to the 1992 Constitution. And take a look at this, giving you a sense of the first key priorities of John Mahama, which includes constitutional reform, which will be the center stage of our conversation tonight. But I want you to look at this. John Mahama is working initially on key priority areas in 4 different sectors. First off, he wants to restore the Ghanaian economy, obviously looking at stabilization of the macroeconomic environment, which he says is key to him, number 1 on the priority. Next is looking at improving the business and investment environment, which obviously has been affected due to the external debt restructuring and other domestic restructuring approaches adopted by the NPP administration, a reason for which the NPP perhaps might have lost the elections, and a reason for which, of course, John Mahama wants to restore confidence in the markets. But here's the big catch tonight, because there's a big issue coming up about possible constitutional reforms. Governance and constitutional reforms, John Mahama calls it, but it's all being made possible now because of the kind of victory the National Democratic Congress is enjoying as a result of the fallout from the December 7 polls. And that's because technically we might have a situation where the majority caucus in Parliament now will be having a significant majority. Guess what? 2/3 of the parliamentary makeup now largely tilting towards that of the National Democratic Congress, which many lawyers and legal brains believe could pave way for significant governance reforms and constitutional reforms to start initially from Parliament. So we'll be digging into it, hearing from the best legal brains that you can hear from tonight, and we'll, of course, subject that to parliamentarians and get their view on what might happen and where we're starting off in terms of the constitutional reform. But don't forget that that's also tied to the issue of accountability and the fight against corruption, because basically that's the essence for which we want good governance. But of course, there's the political promise, and there's, of course, the general call for a constitutional review. What's the promise of this incumbent administration now? I'm talking about the National Democratic Congress. We're quoting directly from the 2024 manifesto of the National Democratic Congress. Take a look at what it says. Quote, they wish to establish a constitutional review implementation committee to implement the recommendations that was initiated by the Constitutional Review Commission, initiated under the Mills Mahama administration. Of course, President Akufo-Addo, as we know, has, of course, done some significant work on that as well. A consultative committee also submitting some recommendations to this administration, a reason for which we might see some key priority areas that may go into this composition of the constitutional reforms. So take a look at what's likely to happen, because broadly, this is where the consensus is building up. First off, it has to do with the number of ministers, for instance. The John Mahama administration says it will not go beyond the 60 it has promised. But in fact, if you ask some Ghanaians, they believe that the 60 is even way beyond what's required. Some want a cap on the numbers. That might be part of the governance reforms that we would see. At least for now, the NDC is promising 60. We don't know if we're going to stay within that threshold. There's also the issue about the appointment of ministers from Parliament. Currently, as we speak, 60% or majority, the Constitution says, has to come from Parliament. But now, some experts believe, well, it's affecting the quality of legislative work and the independence or supremacy of Parliament. Of course, we'll get into it and take the thoughts of our experts tonight. But there's a bigger issue about tax, because the president, per the Article 68 of our Constitution, is not required to pay tax. Some reforms, of course, and calls for some level of review to that constitutional provision. Issues about declaration of assets. For now, there's a regime, except to say that if you're a public officer, your assets are concealed. Can we get to a stage where, of course, these assets will be made public? That's the big question on the declaration of assets. We've tried, of course, the election of MMDCs before. Just to remind you, of course, President Akufo-Addo has been on that agenda. He's tried it. It didn't work. Will the NDC succeed with that reform? We wait to see. And the big elephant, if you want to call it, in the room, the issue about emoluments for Article 71 holders. John Mahama has promised that he will work and cut significantly, of course, this issue about ex-crusher, and do some reforms on the emoluments for Article 71 office holders. But will that happen? And is that all we need in terms of constitutional reform? That's the big question we're asking tonight. And all of that is happening because of the day we're celebrating today, Constitution Day. And for those of you who are asking what the day is about, yes, you need to know that, yes, we're celebrating the 1992 Constitution, but there's something unique about it, because if you take a look at all the constitutions we've had ever since, the post-colonial era, this is by far the most enduring Ghanaian constitution. And we dare say that in terms of democracy and democratic stability across the West Africa sub-region and the entire African region, this is by far one of the most durable documents. But what's wrong about the Constitution, and what do we change about it? Be my guest tonight as I speak to some vexed individuals in this very matter we are looking at. Tonight, my guest is Lawyer Sam Okujeto, a former member of the Council of State. We also have the former Chief Justice, Sophia Akufo, joining us tonight, and the first Deputy Speaker, Bernard Ahiafo, who are all my guests for tonight on PM Express. Welcome. I am Blessed Sugan. We'll see you shortly. Hello there, and thanks for staying with us here on the Joy News channel. This is PM Express, and what a day it has been. Of course, the country witnessing the swearing in of the 6th President of the 4th Republic. But that's anchored on the broader conversation of constitutional reform on a constitutional day, a conversation John Mahama, the President, has initiated. So what needs to change about the Constitution, and where do we start off from? My guest for tonight, Sophia Akufo, is the former Chief Justice of the Republic of Ghana, joining us via Zoom. And we do have Lawyer Sam Okujeto, who's a former member of the Council of State. And also joining us in studio here is the first Deputy Speaker, Bernard Ahiafo. And I must say congratulations to you. Of course, a very heated 48-hour period for you. You've been running around and trying to make the inauguration successful. But we'll get to that story shortly. I want to start off with the venerable former Chief Justice, because you have quite a depth of understanding on the matters of law and, of course, what goes into the framing of our Constitution. At least you've been there to see it, same as Lawyer Okujeto, and, of course, fortunately, the first Deputy Speaker who is with us tonight. So let me start off with you. The President of the Republic, now the former President, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, says, as far as he's concerned, this Constitution, at least, is fit for purpose. Do you stand, of course, on the side of many who say that if it's not broken, then let's not fix it? And kindly unmute for us so we can hear the points you're sharing with us. Kindly, yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you now.
I've never agreed with the former president that the Constitution is so perfect that it doesn't need to be reviewed. In fact, you know, the Constitution being a living document has to be, it has to be nursed, it has to be nurtured, it has to be tweaked, it has to be massaged from time to time. We take a look to see whether it continues in every respect to suit the current day purposes. And there is nothing wrong with reviewing or revising a constitution to make sure that every provision serves the purposes of the people. So I'm fully in agreement with President Mahama that there should be a review. The process started over a decade ago. It's just unfortunate that it came to a, how would I say, an unceremonial pause, but we do need to take a second look at it. 33 years or so we have been working with this constitution. We need to acknowledge that there are certain parts that are not working the way we had anticipated it ought to work. And there are ways it can be better. And definitely, it's not a broken constitution, I fully agree. But the reason you take your car frequently and regularly to the workshop to service it is to make sure that at all times your car is fit for your purpose.
Right. We'll have your thoughts on where we should start the change from. But if you look at our SAP region, I mean, speaking about West Africa, last year wasn't too good for us. A number of unconstitutional changes. You look at the whole of Africa, we seem to be the highest in terms of unconstitutional changes. Yet, our constitution, some way, somehow, appears to have survived for more than 3 decades, as you're pointing to. Proponents of the, retain the status quo would say it's lived longer than any other constitutional arrangement, so why not keep it?
We're not, when I advocate for constitutional revision, it is not throwing this present constitution aside and coming up with a brand new document. No, that's not what constitutional review.
We
that could do better, that could be improved. For example, the provisions, the various provisions on the powers, the appointment powers of the president. Now everybody has come to the realization over these 30 plus years of this constitution that it's excessive. It's excessive to the point that it almost creates an imperial presidency, or as some have described it, a hegemony. And we cannot continue like that. Certainly, if you read the report of the Constitution of the Constitutional Fathers, this is not the outcome they had expected, whereby everything and every appointment that matters in the nation is at the discretion and at the whim of the president. If I think even presidents should feel uncomfortable with such excessive appointment powers.
We attempted carrying out, elections at the district assembly level, but that was not successful because some believe that we should introduce partisanship at that base to, galvanize turnout, which has always been low any time we go to the polls for assembly elections. Is that the only route to address the issue about the appointments that you're referring to?
Not necessarily. If I could pick one of my pet subjects, which is on this issue, which is appointment at the level of the judiciary, no, it shouldn't be by election. It shouldn't be by partisan politics. It should be by an independent body. Don't ask me how that independent body is to be constituted. But it should not be that is very, very important. Now, you've mentioned local government. Local government, there are so many countries where local government appointment or getting to local government is through election, but it is not through partisan election. You stand as an individual in the community and you are there. Once you are elected, you're there to do what you promised the community you will do. We can continue to do it that way, but doing it on a partisan basis, I think, will simply, looking at how partisan politics has virtually fractured our community, our society, we cannot take that to the community level and say that it's already happening, or that people have a partisan mentality, so that even at the community level and at the local government level, it should be like that. No, let's not waste even more time at the community level screaming party politics. No.
Right. And you've just given us a sense of where you want the priority to lie for you in terms of your preference when it comes to the subject matters of constitutional review and where we should be tackling it from your perspective, which has got to do with judicial independence. It's brought up the big conversation around separation of powers. In fact, when the nomination for the Speaker was done, some had criticized the President-elect, now President John Mahama, for announcing that, of course, he had consulted with the NDC MPs on who to be selected for the Speaker. The CDD and some others believe this is separation of powers. We should allow all the arms of government to be independently carrying out whatever form of activity they feel will build their institutions. So from your end, let's touch on the judiciary itself. How would you want us to enhance the independence some more? You talked about the appointment of the Chief Justice, the mode by which it's done. Some believe that it's breeding a lot of partisanship now, a reason for which when a regime changes, perhaps there are increasing calls for a change in the Chief Justice as well.
Well, I think that is, if I may be very, very blunt, that's a very, very simplistic call. That's not how it's supposed to work. One has to look at the Constitution, and we must make the Constitution work. What is wrong in the Constitution is the processes by which the judiciary is appointed, or for that matter, the Chief Justice is appointed. I think the public will feel more comfortable if there was some form of an independent appointments commission whose responsibility it is to undertake a transparent process of nomination, how people are to be nominated, how people are to be selected, what are the qualifications, and all these can be done. This has been something that has been one of the key recommendations at the level of the Commonwealth for decades. And there are countries that are working with that method, and it is much better. You will ask, okay, the independent commission, who's going to appoint it? There can be some of it is by various recognizable groups within the society, within within civil society, and so long as it is not a direct whim of presidency, people will feel more comfortable. In the UK, there is a commission, there is the qualifications. It's an endeavor to ensure that it's more merit-based than largesse or a gift.
Right, and I don't seem to want to belabor this point, but the reason why I'm asking, for instance, is that of late, of course, in just the last few days before the expiration of his term during President Akufo-Addo's tenure, we had a professor of law, for instance, Professor Kwasari, then asking for the removal of the Chief Justice, for instance. That process had to be channeled through...
What has she done? What has she done? Has she committed any an offense of misconduct? Well, that needs to be proven. It's not, you don't just get up and impeach. It's a process. It's not even, let's not even use the word removal, because you need to do, before you reach removal, you're going to go through an impeachment process, which must be whereby you must follow the dictates of the Constitution. Now, personally, I don't think the provisions of the Constitution are adequate for the purpose of impeachment of anybody.
Yeah, the challenge is that process could be triggered again with a different president who might have a different opinion on whether or not the Chief Justice should be removed. So the excessive powers you're talking about, I mean, that could happen. The Chief Justice, another process could be triggered for her to be removed. Are you worried about that?
No, because one is supposed to petition. Yes, it's by way of petition. In the current arrangement, you petition the president, and in the case of the Chief Justice, the matter is referred to the Council of State, which has to go through certain processes, and it's not just a question of I want to remove this person, and then it goes to Council of State, and then Council of State comes back and says, yeah, we agree with you, go ahead and do it. There has to be due process. There is a process that has to be followed. Even in the lower court, there are processes that must be followed. But you can send in your petition. It's not just by an appeal to the president or whatever. You need to send a petition, and the petition must set out some reason. That's part of what due process is all about. So if I'm not in the country, and I've not really been following that aspect of the matter. I know that such a call has been made, but I'm yet to know for what the justifications are that the petitioner has given for asking for the removal of the Chief Justice. But
right.
It's not that easy, even under the Constitution as it is now.
Right. And you've just pointed out to us that you'd have to take leave of us, and that's why I'm rounding off the conversation with you. So, of course, we can allow you, as you're pointing out, to attend to other important business that you have. So in wrapping up, which other forms of, perhaps reforms, improvements would you want to see in the judiciary, or perhaps any other legal provisions that will, first of all, make the judiciary more independent, devoid of bias, and also to improve, the general, atmosphere of rule of law and democratic governance that we have?
I think that to start off with, the most important is the process by which persons are appointed onto the bench. There has to be more transparency. There has to be more accountability in the process. And the public should know. There should be more standards that have to be objective standards that have to be stated, so that the public will also feel confident and comfortable when people are appointed to the bench. And in fact, when the people who are appointed to the bench, they themselves will feel comfortable when the criteria by which they arrive at the bench is made more clear. They'll feel more comfortable instead of always feeling uncomfortable because the public seems to think that it's because of this and it's because of that, which is in no way necessarily related to performance or knowledge or experience or caliber or character and so on and so forth. So that's very important. Character to get on the bench is very important. Merit and character, those two things, very to appointment. But also that one needs to look at. I'm not sure whether it's so much the fault of the Constitution or the enactments that are supposed to flesh out local governance, because if you read for example, just to go straight to the point, if you read, for example, the directive principles of state policy, where decentralization is specifically mentioned in Article 35, and its importance is expressed so that that's the point at which people begin to actively interact with and participate in governance and in democracy and everything. You can see that it's supposed to be very important. But unfortunately, the further along we've worked with this constitution, the more centralized local governance has become, whereby, in my view, the MCs and DCs and the assembly people look more to how they can please central government rather than how they ought to be pleasing the people they are supposed to be governing within the community.
Right. As we wrap up, your final message to the president. We have a new president who has the executive powers to cause change, and perhaps your message to your own colleagues on the bench as well, because in recent times you've had cause to worry that the rulings of the court are becoming a bit more predictable. I guess those were your words.
Listen, there's nothing wrong. I think I was misquoted or misunderstood. I think my very revered friend, Mr. Okujeto, would agree with me that there is nothing in quality justice which fights against predictability. In fact, predictability which is based on sound application of the law is one of the goals of administration of justice. That is why we even have precedents and the principle of stare decisis. So it's what becomes objectionable is when there are aberrant outcomes, which leaves you scratching your head. And it keeps happening. But predictability, there's nothing wrong with predictability. The law is supposed to be, the administration of justice is supposed to be predictable. There are the facts and there is the law, and then you apply the law to the facts to arrive at an outcome. When with similar sets of facts, you keep reaching new and different outcomes without giving good reasons which are legally sound, that's when it becomes worrisome. I hope I've clarified this.
Right, and briefly your comment to President John Mahama as we wrap up.
I'm happy that he is going to go forward with constitutional review.
Well, it appears that we've lost the former Chief Justice there, Sophia Akufo, who's just, of course, giving us insight into what needs to happen in terms of constitutional reform. But point well made. And, of course, it would have been amazing for us to get her message to President John Mahama. I'll come to Bernard Ahiafo, who's in studio with us. But lawyer Samuel Kujeto is also with us. And you've listened to the former Chief Justice as well. She says you would side with her on some of the major issues she's pointed out, correct?
Well, yes, the analysis he has made all to the point that sometimes there is, when we start discussions, misconstructions comes in. And sometimes people pick sentences completely out of context and then put that forward as being the theme, when indeed it is not. So I think the issue, as she has said, it's important for us. She's talking about constitutional reform, the judiciary. The judiciary, it is true that in the UK, they have a commission that has responsibility for it. Now, we have processes laid down in our constitution, but perhaps it can be re-looked at and see whether we can tweak it here and there to make more improvement upon it and get away this perception to think that people can lobby to become Chief Justice or lobby to become judges. It is based upon merit issue. But then you have a system whereby this merit is measured and not influenced, but based upon qualification, integrity, which is so important in the judicial process. So that is what I would say. But then there is the fundamental issue about local government, where maybe there are a lot of different views on the matter. And I think President Akufo-Addo did put a proposition before Parliament for elective office for local government. Unfortunately, that was torpedoed. And perhaps it's something that I think President Mahama will need to relook at, because in all jurisdictions that I am aware of, the mayor, who is the chief executive, is an elective office. It's an elective office because it's dealing with local people. It is much more, they relate more to the locality than an MP. Because you see, when you have Parliament and then an MP is standing for election and he goes making promises that I will do this, that sometimes I laugh at it and I said, you have no power to do any such thing. You are not the government. You can't do anything. The things are expected to be done by the government, not by you. You can make your opinion heard. You can debate issues when they come to the House. You can make suggestions. But that is where it ends. And so there's complete misunderstanding in the system. And I think that local government is so vital and so important that the people should be elected directly by the people, and they should be answerable. In fact, one of the examples I always give is that if my community is dirty and rubbish is piled up, whom am I supposed to talk to about it? Was it my MP? It's not his job. But I can call my assembly member who is elected, and I go and tell him, I say, if you don't have that thing clear within a week or 2 weeks, I will campaign to ensure that you are not re-elected. Because it is his job. Now, what do? We've contracted the whole of the cleaning process to Zoom Lion, an independent institution. They employ the cleaners, so nobody takes responsibility. I'm telling you, I have been around the country. If you see the number of plastics that are collected in gutters and in street corners and the rest, it is so shameful. And a few months ago, I was in Mauritius. I can tell you, it made me feel ashamed that Ghana has prided itself for being a civilized society. Not a single rubbish do you see anywhere in Mauritius. Not a single one. Plastic is completely out. In the shops, you are given paper bag. That's what you do. And I know in South Africa also they were insisting on paper bags. Right. So there are things that we needed to look at and reform. And so the president has brought himself forth. He has been there before. Don't worry, don't forget that. But perhaps sometimes to come back again is a good idea in the sense that he may look back and realize that there are certain things he could have done when he was president before.
And this is where some say that we should be looking at the quality of laws we pass at the parliamentary level. We could scale that up to what's happening at the national level because that's crucial, isn't it? The quality of MPs and also the calls about capping the numbers. So we stick to the 275. They make all the laws for us. Your take on that?
Well, no. You see, the question is that we kept increasing the members. Just a few days ago, I was talking to some of my colleagues, both on the council and also people I interact with, and I kept complaining that we keep increasing our members of parliament. That it has never dawned on us the cost to the state. That if you take the allowances, the salaries, and the superannuation that are given to the MP, you add it up, there is very little left after the taxes, from the taxes, for development. That's why we keep borrowing money. We kept going out to go and borrow money all the time. But the question, when you borrow the money, you must do what? Pay it back. Is that not correct?
Right.
Where do you get the resources to pay it back? What work is the government doing to pay it back? Government does no work. Government is not, it does not generate income at all. You only depend upon taxes.
Right.
I had the opportunity in the early 60s when I was a member of parliament to be the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee. And I always take the public servants to task, the civil servants. And I asked them, I say, you went to GIMPA, because that time it was compulsory. After you got your degree from the university, you spend, I think, 9 months or so in GIMPA before you are employed by the government. And I kept asking them, I said, did they not teach you accounting to realize that there must be income before there is an expenditure? But here you go, you create the expenditure, and then you expect the income to come by itself. So there is a lot of work that I think has to be done. And the constitutional review that was done before, which did not materialize, but it did not materialize because I think there was also an error there, which apparently the president himself committed by writing a white paper on it. When in fact, according to the Constitution, that is not what it's supposed to do.
Right.
It's not a question of white paper, because the white paper means your view. But it's not your view they're asking about. That when you do a constitutional reform and it's done like that, it's supposed to be going through a proper process. The process is to take it to the plebiscite. Let the people look at it.
Right.
Let the people decide. Let the people express their opinion. And then it can come back to become a legislation.
Right. These are all pertinent matters that you're raising. Fortunately, the First Deputy Speaker is with us, so he might perhaps respond to all of these issues. But perhaps you want to do 30 seconds each for us, you and then former Chief Justice Ofaya Akufo. Your take on the the composition of Parliament now. Some are raising concerns about the 4 outstanding or recollated results, some of the MPs who've been allowed to pass and to be sworn in. Your take on this whole recollation provision within the law itself? You have a brief take on that as to whether or not these MPs should continue to hold themselves out in the wake of the tussle.
Well, the coalition process was something we ourselves have created because, to tell you the truth, the Electoral Commission keeps repeating the elections are won at the polling station. That's simple, in the sense that the votes are counted, they are recorded, it's signed by party representatives. That's the document that polling. How did Vice President Bawumia decide in the night that he had lost the election? It is because he was able to get the coalition papers from the representatives which were sent to him. And he added it up and realized that he hadn't won. And so he gave in, which was beautiful because it avoided a lot of tension. And here we saw that people were there who were ordered to go to the coalition center. For what business? That is none of their business. It was only the party representatives. They are the only ones there. Okay. Some of them went and burnt ballot boxes. Some of them sent fire to the electoral offices. I mean, it's complete nonsensical. It is vandalism of the worst caliber. Unfortunately, this is being perpetrated by politicians.
Right.
So I think that.
I see. And for Chief Justice, you have a brief take on the issue about the recollation as to whether or not it's lawful or otherwise.
I have nothing significant to add to the what Mr. Okujeto has said. No.
All right. Let's come to Ben Ahiamfo. And I'm grateful that both of you have been able to make some time with us because Ben Ahiamfo has heard all the issues that you've raised. In fact, criticizing MPs at some point. Did you first of all take responsibility that you, the politicians, are the ones creating the tension with all these recollation issues and all of that, first of all? By the way, congratulations.
No, thank you. I'm very grateful. Let me use the opportunity to say a very good evening to the cherished viewers and listeners, not forgetting the people of Akachi South constituency. Let me also thank the leadership of my party, the caucus in Parliament, my constituency, for the confidence reposed in me, electing me as the First Deputy Speaker of Parliament. I do not agree that as members of Parliament we should take responsibility for it, because members of Parliament are involved in election, but they don't conduct elections. Elections are conducted by the Electoral Commission. A member of Parliament may be one individual, but you have so many polling stations, you cannot be there. You have your representatives there. So, as indicated, the results are declared at the polling stations. So how many polling stations can you be at the time that the results are being declared? So the best thing that you do is to gather the result from the polling stations, and at the end of the day, you can even sit at the comfort of your house to add it up to determine whether you have won the election or you have lost the elections.
Do you feel the other 4 should not have come into the chamber in the first place?
Well, I believe strongly when a procedure is set down for a right to be exercised, it is that procedure that will have to be followed in exercising the right. The clerk in chairing the program drew the attention to a constitutional provision that says that if you know you are not qualified to take part in the election of the speakers, don't take part. If you do so, you are committing an offense.
Right.
You will be made to face the full rigors of the law. I happen to read the injunction from Akotia, and I look at the terms of the order, which states that you are restrained from registering. You are restrained from being sworn in as a member of parliament. And then you are restrained from carrying yourself out as a member of parliament. So if this is what the court is saying, in respect to the court, I do not think that such a person, per the order of the court, should be registered, should be sworn in.
Right.
He should carry himself out.
But be it as it may, your side has... I get the point. But significantly, you have all the numbers now. Close to 2/3. By the end of the entire process, some say you might have the entire absolute majority and to constitutional reforms, which former president, now president, of course he's the 6th president now, John Mahama has spoken about that.
Yes.
He will initiate governance and constitutional reforms. How are you positioning yourself as Parliament and by extension the NDC side to support that process?
Well, let me start by agreeing with the former Chief Justice that Constitution is a living document, and add that as a living document it is capable of growth. The framers of the Constitution envisage a possibility of a review of the Constitution one day. That is why they have stated in Article 289 that the Constitution can be amended. And they went further in 290 and 291 to state how it is supposed to be amended. That is, whether it is an entrenched provision or it is non-entrenched provision. It is on that basis, looking at 290 and 291, that I will want to disagree a bit with my learned senior, Okujeto, in the sense that when the Constitutional Review Committee completes their work, the process should not be issuing a white paper. I will not go by issuing a white paper, but the distinction should be made as to whether or not the provision that they are proposing to be reviewed is an entrenched clause or it is not an entrenched clause. Now, if it is an entrenched clause, then the process as stipulated by the Constitution itself must be triggered to amend that particular entrenched clause. If it is a non-entrenched clause, then the process as triggered by Article 291 in the Constitution itself must be triggered. So if it is an entrenched provision, then it means that a plebiscite or a referendum is needed. Right. But if it is a non-entrenched provision, then the process is without a referendum.
So let's look at, for instance, 60%.
Plebiscite.
Yeah, 60% majority of ministers coming from Parliament. That's a stipulation within the Constitution, for instance. What's your take in terms of the kind of reforms we should be having on that?
Well, if the Constitution as it is now, more than 50% of the ministers must come from Parliament. There is a jurisprudence of it, but for purposes of time, we may not be able to go into that particular jurisprudence. But simply put, people are of the view that a budget has been rejected by Parliament, in view of which they want some members of Parliament to be part of the executives so that
they can influence the process.
Yes, right. That will be avoided. Forgetting the fact that Parliament is an independent body, an independent arm of government. So the fusion that more than 50% of members of Parliament must be appointed as ministers would in a way compromise the independence of Parliament.
You believe that?
Yes.
Okay.
Because these are members of Parliament and they are again members of the executives, cabinet ministers who formulate policy at that particular level, follow the policy to Parliament, and they will have to defend the policy that they have formulated instead of looking at that particular policy dispassionately from an independent point of view. So if I am a member of Parliament appointed as a minister, I've taken part in a cabinet decision, and then that cabinet policy translates in Parliament. Do you expect me to come to Parliament and come and kick against that particular decision?
Obviously not. And there's a bigger challenge with the language. With the
cabinet,
yeah, right.
We have taken a decision to take a loan of 1 million Ghana cedis. That was a decision taken by the executives at cabinet, of which I am a member. Will it accord with common sense and reason that I'll come to Parliament and then act as an independent person to look at it and say that no, this loan is not in the interest of the country, therefore the loan must not be taken. You should do that at the cabinet level.
And given the numbers you have, for instance, the 2/3 majority, you've assured us that you would not use it irresponsibly. You're going to be a leading member of
the point that I want to make is that
right.
until that particular provision in the Constitution is reviewed, we'll go by 50% of the ministers being appointed, or more than 50%.
And that's where the challenge is, with the number I'm talking about, that you may be tempted to always use your number to push through whatever you feel you want to push through.
Well, that is not it. That is not it in a sense that the rest of the members of Parliament are not ministers. So, as a member of Parliament, I am supposed to look at things in a very fair manner, in the interest of the country, and that is what exactly I am supposed to do.
Right.
But you see, sometimes you are a member of Parliament, you may kick against it at cabinet level, but cabinet decision is cabinet decision, taken by the majority of the members at cabinet and agreed upon at cabinet. So whether you like it or not, you are part of that particular decision making. A board cannot take a decision and you'll be a board member and you say that that is not your decision. Once you are a board member, it's a decision of the board. So that is where the problem is coming from. Right. So there is the need for us to look at some aspect of the Constitution. But for me, in looking at it, the simplest way is to classify it in the form of entrenched provision and non-entrenched provision,
right,
and will be guided by the constitutional provision in Article 290 and 291 as to how those provisions are supposed to be amended.
And of course, this is just the start of it. I'm sure that in the coming days, definitely a lot more will be happening in Parliament, and we'll be knocking at your doors to, of course, get some explanations. I'm grateful indeed for spending some time. And congratulations once more on your election as the first Deputy Speaker. That's it. A show for you, PM Express with Blessed Sugam tonight. We'll see you again next time.